Welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture this. A massive global corporation tries to outsmart an entire country's legal system, and in doing so, they accidentally prove a profound quirk of human psychology. We're talking about a pricing war, human irrationality, and the single penny that ruined absolutely everything. Because, as you'll see, sometimes the smartest people in the room, with the biggest, fanciest spreadsheets, completely fail to understand how our brains actually work. Let's dive right into the fascinating story of the zero price effect.
Let's rewind a bit to the year 2010. It was a classic David versus Goliath scenario, but, well, with a deeply interesting twist. Amazon found what looked like an absolutely genius loophole to bypass French law. I mean, it was a highly calculated move, meticulously designed to secure total, unchallenged dominance in the European market. But human behavior doesn't exactly follow a neat, logical corporate spreadsheet, right? We are delightfully irrational creatures. And this incredibly clever trick, man, it ultimately failed spectacularly.
To understand why, you need to hear this number, 113,000. Now that's not a yearly figure or, even a monthly one. In 2010, Amazon was selling an astonishing 113,000 books a single day in France alone. Just let that sink in. Because of this massive, relentless volume and their deeply aggressive pricing strategies, the old, historic, traditional French bookstores were just being systematically crushed. They were closing their doors one by one, completely unable to compete with the sheer scale of the e-commerce giant. The very cultural landscape of France was literally shifting beneath their feet.
So the threat to local culture became so severe that the French government felt like they had no choice. The French parliament personally stepped in to intervene, passing one incredibly simple yet highly targeted law. The law: no online bookstore had the right to offer free shipping, period. They recognized that Amazon's biggest competitive advantage, really the ultimate weapon in their arsenal, was giving buyers completely free delivery. By legally banning free shipping, the government hoped to level the playing field and protect those local physical shops from basically going extinct.
But come on, Amazon wasn't just going to give up their biggest advantage that easily. They came up with a highly creative workaround to comply with the new law. Here was the plan. Every shipment would now require a payment. But that payment would be exactly 1 cent. Just a single cent, roughly equivalent to 1 US penny. They logically assumed, hey, 1 cent is practically zero, right? To the brilliant minds and powerful corporate executives looking at their spreadsheets, there should be absolutely no shift in consumer behavior. It's just a penny. Who even bothers picking those up off the sidewalk anymore?
Well, actually, scratch that. The spreadsheet was entirely wrong. Instead of business as usual, that tiny, seemingly invisible 1 cent fee caused an absolute catastrophe. Amazon's book sales in France plummeted by a staggering 40% almost overnight. No way, right? A massive multinational logistics empire was completely derailed, and it wasn't disrupted by a fierce competitor or some massive economic crash. It was disrupted by the absolute smallest denomination of currency in existence. The entire French market basically hit a brick wall because of a single penny.
Let the shock of that statistic really sink in for a second. Why should 1 single cent, a coin that literally costs more to mint than it is actually worth, cause such a massive, fundamental shift in consumer behavior? Logically, it makes 0 sense. If you are perfectly willing to pay $20 for a new hardcover book, why does $20.01 suddenly make you abandon your shopping cart and close your browser? Seriously, what is happening in our brains to cause such a violent reaction to a penny?
The answer lies in a fascinating quirk of human psychology. It's an economic theory known as the zero price effect. It turns out human beings do not process prices on a strictly linear scale. The distance between paying absolutely nothing and paying literally any cost at all, even a single penny, is disproportionately massive in our brains. Free isn't just another price point on a graph, It is a profoundly powerful emotional trigger that completely short-circuits our normal decision-making process. Think of it this way. The mental leap required for a consumer to go from paying $0 to paying just $1, it's like standing at the edge of a terrifying bottomless canyon. When something is free, there's absolutely zero friction. There's no risk, no real decision-making required, no need to pull out a credit card or even really consider the value. But the second you introduce a price, even 1 single cent, you force the brain to cross that canyon. You force a transaction. You force the customer to ask, wait, is this worth it? And for 40% of Amazon's French customers, crossing that mental canyon to pay 1 cent simply wasn't worth the effort.
Now, contrast that terrifying, uncrossable canyon with a smooth, beautifully paved golden road, because the zero price effect reveals a brilliant flip side. Once a customer successfully crosses that first threshold, once they have committed to paying you just one single dollar, the psychological barrier basically shatters. The journey from paying $1 to paying $1,000 feels remarkably small and easy by comparison. The friction of becoming a paying customer has already been overcome. The hard part isn't getting them to spend a lot. The hard part is just getting them to spend at all.
So we're basically left with two completely different consumer mindsets. On one side, we have the free user. Listen, no matter how incredibly valuable your product or service is, a free user has a very low perceived commitment. Statistically, they have a shockingly low chance of ever opening their wallet for you in the future. On the flip side, we have the paid user. Someone who has paid you just one single dollar has actively demonstrated value. Because they crossed that initial canyon, they have a drastically higher probability of paying you hundreds or even thousands down the line.
Let's bring all of this together into a real actionable takeaway. The ultimate business lesson from Amazon's massive blunder in France is actually remarkably simple. Never be free. Whether you are offering a service to friends, maybe building a new app, or trying to attract fresh clients, set a price. Even if it feels completely trivial, even if you charge just one single dollar, charge it. Do not give your hard work away for free. You absolutely need to identify your paying customers and get them to cross that psychological canyon immediately. The reason you must always charge something is profound, because between 0 and 1, there is an infinite distance. Free creates users, but 1 creates customers. It's a real game changer of a perspective that completely rewrites how we should think about value and human behavior. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to ask yourself. What is the 1-cent canyon in your own business, or even your life, that you're afraid to make people cross?